Hello and welcome to Manibil. Today I'm going to comment on another video by Bernardo Kastrup concerning the title of the video is Reality Made of Consciousness. And we're sort of circling around the same problem here, right? And this is a more than an hour-long presentation, and it points out perfectly the problems in the philosophy of his, in my opinion, right? Because he takes 2 minutes to make the leap of, I have some perception, therefore there is something beyond my perception. As if it's a deduction, as if it's an inference, as if it follows logically, and if you don't see that, there's something wrong with you kind of approach, right? It's sort of built into the thinking. And this is the problem I have been pointing out recently, that it's not good enough to say, I have some colors and some sounds, therefore there's something beyond those colors and sounds. It doesn't follow, right? It's something almost similar. I can't help thinking of thinking of David Hume and the is-ought problem. It's like, there's an elephant and this woman said this and moved there, and therefore you should or shouldn't do. This problem of inferring something out of the blue, right? Just sort of stitching things together that sounds like a logical inference of some kind, while it isn't. It's an invalid structure, right? I have some colors, therefore there's something beyond my colors. You have to deconstruct it. It is molded into some kind of sophist, I would say, linguistic. It's more fluffy in the use of terms, so to say, right? When it's presented. But basically it is, I have some experiences, therefore there's something beyond my experiences. I'm not saying that you cannot state axiomatically, which is my point. You can, it's completely valid in my opinion to say, I have some experiences. In order for me to make sense of them, I am stating axiomatically. I am deciding for myself to say, I'm working from the axiom that these experiences are representations of something beyond those experiences. That is the same as saying I cannot infer anything. I cannot deduce any logic or any deductive argument or any syllogistic anything. That because I have a color, therefore there must be. It might sound like there's not a big difference to you, but there is a humongous difference, right? And it comes about when you are dealing with other people in your philosophy. Because if you're saying, I have some experiences, therefore it follows, you are inflicting bad reasoning on other people and expecting them to follow you, right? You are expecting them to accept that you are deducing it. You are not arriving, or you're not settling with an axiom saying, this is what I am going to do. You don't have to follow me, right? This is what I'm going to do. That's what an axiom is. Because it doesn't follow from your colors and your sounds and your tastes and so on that there must be something beyond them, right? How could it possibly follow, man, right? Just because you have grown up expecting or have gotten used to treating something as if there is something beyond doesn't mean it follows from those experiences, right? It doesn't mean it follows. This is sort of the problem of philosophy in general, that I see that I have to make logical leaps in order to convince people. If I'm not doing some kind of pretense, at least, of logic, then I'm not doing philosophy. Oh yes, the problem is when you're trying to force some logic into something that is basically not logical or cannot possibly be logic without clarifying very, very precisely what you're actually doing. Then you have to use an axiom instead, in my opinion. You might call it something different. I call it an axiom, which is a statement that says, I cannot reason my way further. I have to settle on something, and I'm saying, this is what I'm going to do. Clearly stating, I can't reason my way. I can only say, this is what I'm going to do, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's much more honest and real and what's the term I'm looking for? Shows much more humility rather than, hey, I have an experience. Therefore, there's a mind out there beyond your mind, also beyond my mind, and everything should obey my... Fuck off, man, right? They get into these grandiose statements about how everybody is experiencing things and everybody has a mind out there. And, it's oh my God, man, right? No. Speak for yourself, right? Because if Descartes taught you anything, it is that the basis, the ground floor, must be something like solipsism, right? You have access to your own experiences. And you have to start there, right? You can't just jump into say, okay, now I'm going to make, you can make it axiomatically as I say, okay, I'm making this axiom that this is the case, and that is the case, and this is the case, and that is the case. Fine. But then it's your axioms. What people seem to do is making a pretense of logical deduction of some kind, which I don't think is possible when it's some kind of meta-logic then, at least, right? But then we should discuss I'm not really sure other than you need to have settled on knowledge before you can do logic. Because deductive logic, it's like this thing exists, and I have this thing here that might be of the same kind, so it must have all the attributes of the general idea of the thing, right? Bananas are yellow. This is a banana, therefore it's yellow. This sort of kind of thing. But you need to have an idea of what is knowledge, which would be the banana, right? And then you would have to have certain metaphysics and epistemology in order to start doing logic. Okay, let's head into this video, which is sort of a kind of analytic idealism, I guess, presentation, yet another one by Bernardo Kastrup, right? I'm not going to go all the way through because it's not necessary. As I say, it's the first 3 minutes that are interesting, and then he keeps bringing all sorts of scientific research papers, whatever, as if that is necessary when you have made a humongous invalid leap into an existence based on something that isn't that existence, right?
The universe has the network topology of a brain. It does suggest, again, by a completely different line of argumentation and evidence, that nature is mental, and physicality is just a representation, an outer appearance of mentation. Welcome to our Psychology and Non-Duality conference. So I'm here with the speaker for our first talk, Dr. Bernardo Kastrup.
Non-duality. So it's like that there cannot be more than one kind of thing, apparently. So it's like when it's sort of a non-duality, it's like, okay, but it's not necessarily mind, then everything, right? It's just not two different things. So if it's not, everything could be physical then. If that's also a non-duality, if everything is just one thing. So it's a conference for people who thinks there's only one kind of thing, but then there might be an infinite number of different kinds of things that each person. One person might have one thing that is everything, and then another person might have another thing that is everything, or what? It's sort of this defining yourself as what you're not. I'm a non-dualist. I'm a non-basketball player. Okay, so what? I'm a non-basketball player. I'm a non-mechanic. I mean,
Before I introduce Bernardo, I'm just going to go through some of the housekeeping for today. So we're going to have 3 sessions, and each is going to last approximately 1 hour. There'll be 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of each talk. So if you have any questions, please add them to the Q&A tab on Zoom. And please also note that we've got a limited amount of time available for the Q&A, so please keep your questions as concise as possible. And we're going to prioritize questions that have been given the most thought. Our second talk is going to run from 2:30.
That has been given the most thought? How do you know about that? Oh, man. So it's your personal interpretation then, right? So you have to appeal to your personal interpretation of your experiences in order to understand what is beyond your experience or something like that. Unless you think that everything goes on in your mind, then it's purely subjectivity, pure subjective everything. Otherwise, you're saying I have to make a personal judgment about that outside world. Why do you need to do that?
To 3:30, and the final session will be from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. UK time. The itinerary can also be found in the link in the chat bar, which my colleague Lally is just going to share with you there now. So without further ado, let's get started with our first talk. Dr. Bernardo Kastrup is the Executive Director of Essentia Foundation. His work has been leading the modern renaissance of metaphysical idealism.
The modern renaissance, right? They're sort of full of themselves in this foundation. Oh, I'm leading the crusade against materialism. Yeah, man. Oh. And I can't help, there's the Bill Gates Foundation and the Clinton Foundation, and now there's the Essentia Foundation, right? It's like, is it some kind of tax shelter or something, right? These is a sort of the 1% elite of the world, right? Europe and USA. They're hiding in foundations to whitewash or maybe not whitewash, but avoid taxation of some kind. I can't help think that, right? Because that's basically what it is. They create these foundations in order to say, oh, I'm so virtuous. Yes, I don't have to pay so many taxes then. So when you have sort of build up a war chest of money, having made a lot of money in the free market, then you place them in a foundation to make sure that they are taxed as little as possible, right? I think that's what's going on, honestly, right? So all the little people, all the poor people, they can pay full taxes, right?
Notion that reality is essentially mental. He has 2 PhDs, one in philosophy and another in computer engineering. As a scientist, Bernardo has worked for CERN and the
What I would like to know is, did he pay for those PhDs himself, or was it the taxpayers paying for it, right?
Phillips Research Laboratories, where the Casimir effect of quantum field theory was discovered. His ideas in philosophy have been featured in Scientific American, the Institute of Art and Ideas, the blog of the American Philosophical Association, and Big Think, among others.
So it starts to sound like an appeal to authority, which is a logical fallacy. We need to tell all sorts of stuff about this, object called Bernardo that can make some noises claiming to be philosophy that might inflict itself on your thinking, right? So if we say, it has been doing this, it has been doing that, and has been doing the others, so you just have to trust whatever it says because it has these titles, right? It's an appeal to authority. Just give me the fucking arguments, and I'll decide whether or not I like them, right? Or I find them valid.
Bernardo is the author of 10 books, including titles such as Decoding Jung's Metaphysics, The Idea of the World, and Why Materialism is Baloney. You can learn more about his work by visiting www.bernardokastrup.com. And if you're interested in submitting an article for publication via the Essentia Foundation's network, please go to essentiafoundation.org/submissions. So Bernardo, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us here today. And whenever you're ready, get going.
Thanks, Neo. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. what I will basically do today, I'm not a spiritual teacher. I think you will find that out rather quickly. I come from an analytic background from.
Well, don't tell me what I'm going to find out, right? I'll make that judgment myself. So what a smart sophist would do is, no, I'm not a mystic. And then they will start to, use some mystic kind of language and leaps of faith and whatever, right? But no, I'm not a mystic, right? Well, I'll decide whether or not I will consider you X, Y, or Z, right?
Hardcore analytic philosophy and computer science. So my message is based on reasoning and laboratory evidence, and hopefully that will.
Your message. Are you a messenger? Right? It's not philosophy. You're a little messenger from your big daddy mind or what? Right? The message. It's sort of, I'm handing you this message, you should just accept it sort of thing, right? Why not say I'm presenting my philosophy? This is my philosophy. These are my arguments. Please scrutinize them and try to find flaws in them, because if they're flawed, I would like to know, right? I would like to have that understanding so I can correct them and make it even better than it is now, right? No. This is a message, right? Just like Jesus or Buddha or, what are they called, all these weirdos, right?
Line up and dovetail well with what you will hear today from people who are probably a lot more spiritually aware and clever than I am. I'll share my screen with you because I'll be using slides. So I hope you can all see my first slide. The topic is to answer the question: is reality made of consciousness as opposed to abstract quantitative matter, as opposed to.
I have a beef with this thing, this fetish that these philosophers have. Now, it might be to some extent a matter of choosing the words and so on, but why are they so hung up on what things are made of, right? If you have an experience and you say, okay, either I'm going with that's all I have, so that's my existence, right? If I'm sort of solipsist, then my colors and my sounds and so that's all I have, right? So that's basically my existence, you could say, right? But if they are not the exact existence, but there are some existence beyond that, which they might be a representation of, well, then I can't get to it, right? Because that's exactly why I have that experience instead of the actual thing. So I can't get to what it's made of, right? So either I have to say it's made of the colors and the sounds, or the sounds or colors are representation of that which is really made of, that I then can't get to, right? And at the end of the day, you have your experiences, right? No matter what kind of metaphysics you end up with, you are always referencing your colors, your sounds, and your tastes, and so on, right? And what might be derived or entails from that, like a cognition, like elephant, for instance, right? But I don't care what the fuck the elephant is made of. What I care about is what the hell do I do with it? Do I fight it? Do I fuck it? Do I flee from it? Or do I fucking eat it or feed on it, right? That's what is interesting to me. I don't care what it's made of. It doesn't change whatever I have to do with it. I can't base my decision on what to do with it from what it's made of, right? And as I just pointed out, either they're just some colors and sounds, and that's my experience. That's my existence, my bare existence reference, right? Or they are representations of which I can then not get to the existence because that's beyond my experiences, right? So it doesn't the fuck matter what the hell it's made of, right?
Mass, charge, momentum, spin. Is it made of thought-like stuff, idea-like stuff? And that's the question.
idea-like stuff, thought-like stuff. What is stuff and what is idea-like? So it's made out of colors or sounds or what? No, it's made out of a concept, an abstraction or something like that. An abstraction called mind or mental or consciousness, right? Which you can't experience, which is purely some kind of artificial abstraction. And then I'm going to use that to describe everything, right? Doesn't fly for me.
That I want to address. Now, to think of reality in a different way, whether you believe it or not, but even to give the hypothesis a serious chance, we have to change a certain perspective. We have to regard the world.
No. Why don't you talk about yourself? Why don't you say, I have to change my perspective? Don't tell me what I have to do, right? Don't lecture me, right? I can think for myself, thank you very much, right? Speak for yourself, man. Talk as if this is what I'm going to do, right? Don't inflict your thinking. Don't make it into something, you have to do this, right? It sounds like a demandment. It's like a commandment, like you have to think like this, otherwise there's something wrong with you, right? That approach is never going to fly. I'm going to reject it outright, right? And who gives a crap whether or not it's little balls of electrons or protons, or whether it's smashed out fields or whatever? These are all abstractions, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's stupid to spend time on that, right? It's this scientific, reductive, abstract reduction that is leading nowhere, that he apparently wants to tap into anyway, rather than doing philosophy, right? It's annoying. Why don't you just do the rigid philosophy rather than sort of, I have to, put some academic papers over this so it sounds like I'm very smart and it's on a scientific foundation, this thinking. Science is something you can only do when you have done all of metaphysics and all of epistemology, and I would say also a description of what you mean by objective. If you're doing something with other people, which you apparently seem to be doing now, since you're sitting here talking to all the potential users of YouTube, right? Or where else it might be, published.
From a slightly different perspective in order to give the hypothesis a fair hearing. And these changes of perspective have happened many times in the history of science and in the history of philosophy. One of the most fundamental changes of perspective happened in the 19th century when this man here to the left, James Maxwell, understood that electromagnetism was better accounted for with the notion of fields as opposed to the notion of particles, little material beads bouncing around. Instead of that, we had to think of electromagnetic effects as the work of invisible fields that permeate space-time.
Now, I don't like when you apparently want to start at the very, very deepest end, supposedly, of philosophy, then immediately jump into appealing to some kind of mathematics or science or, quantum whatever, right? I don't like that, right? I don't like that at all. Because, for instance, quantum mechanics and all that, it's very abstract, right? It's basically so abstract, so you barely feel that you're in connection with anything you can possibly experience, right? It's abstraction upon abstraction upon abstraction, and then some mathematics and a few more abstractions, right? And then you can't say where anything is because it's basically, you're throwing the dice, right? I don't give a crap about that shit. I want to know how to get to that fucking tomato, right? And I feel I can conceptualize a tomato, right? And if there are two people and there's only one tomato, what do I do? If there's another person that obviously seems to go for that tomato, do I just pretend I don't see the tomato? Do I run to the tomato and grab it before the other person grabs it? Do I slap the person in the face and push it away so I can grab the tomato? Do I take half of the tomato and say, you can have the other half? What do I do about it? I don't care what the fuck it's made of. I don't care if it's made of colors. I don't matter if it's made of mind. I don't care if it's made of potatoes. I don't care if it's made of atoms. I don't care. I don't fucking care what it's made of, right? I want to get to what the fuck do I do with it, right? How do I handle it? Do I just do whatever I want, right? I don't care what it's made of. It doesn't change anything. It's not like a tomato suddenly is going to taste like, a croissant, because now I know it's made of mind. All of a sudden it changed. It's still the fucking same no matter what it's made of, right? So why don't you do some important philosophy rather than staying in these cloud fucking castles, man?
Time and that do not have defined physical boundaries, so to say, or defined spatial boundaries. That's a better way to put it. And of course, once that change in perspective was done, then it opened up many, many doors in science later on.
Okay, so from things to fields. Okay, so an elephant or a tomato is not a thing, it's a field. Okay, does it change anything? No, I still have to go move my ass down to the store and grab some tomatoes or whatever it is I'm doing, right? I don't really care if it's a thing or it's a field. It's still a tomato, right? Isn't it? Does it change tomatoes, whether or not you think of them as things or fields? No. And if it does, I would like you to explain how it changes, right? Please enlighten me. How do the tomatoes change, whether or not I think of them as things or as fields, right? Or is that not what we are talking about? Then what are we talking about then? Because tomatoes are much more important than your abstractions, right?
By the first half of the 20th century, this guy here to the right, Richard Feynman, understood that the best way to extend what was then new theory, quantum theory, in a way that allowed us to, for instance, make sense of how particles interact with one another, so-called particles. The best way to do that was to understand the particles themselves as field phenomena, as to understand particles as ripples in a river. There are no particles in the sense that there are no ripples except for the river. There is only the river.
So fucking what? Now, this is going to be so it's sort of, I feel it's a sophist attempt to say, okay, you need to change your picture of things, think of fields and stuff, and then I'm going to bring in some pictures of the universe and of a rat's mind and say they look alike, it's because it's fields, so it's all mind, and sort of this kind of approach, right? No, I don't buy any scientific bullshit, because you need to have settled your metaphysics and your epistemology and possibly also objectivity in order to convey something that is scientific. You can't use science in metaphysics. Get it out of my face, my mate, right?
And the ripples are behaviors of the river. They are not things in themselves. In the same way, and that's what this animation tries to illustrate.
Okay, but then it's not the thing itself, right? These are just fancy, colors moving around. This is not the thing itself, right? I don't care about models. The model is not the thing itself. So you're trying to inflict a model on me that you're placing as the foundation, and then you're going to potentially, hopefully, have success in that, and then use that foundation in people listening as an agreement, as sort of an implicit agreement of what we're talking about. But you're just manipulating people's mind to have the understanding that you have, so that you feel like you're talking about the same thing, right? You're sort of being the one-eyed king of the blind, inflicting your bullshit philosophy and then referring back to it, right? I would say that a reduction base has to be something that it has to be that which anyone can experience by their own accord and start their own philosophy without your help, right? And when we start to talk to each other about it, we can always refer back to something that is directly accessible. I don't care about your models. Don't inflict your models on me as some kind of base for philosophy. It has to be something I can access and accessed before you started talking to me, right? Otherwise, you're manipulating my mind into thinking a certain way, according to your ideas and abstractions, right?
Is the invisible quantum field that underlies all nature, the entire universe. There are several quantum fields, by the way. It is that invisible field, when it behaves, when it ripples, that gives rise to what we call particles. And particle interactions are just the interference patterns between ripples going through one another. And that's all there is to it. The whole of nature is field-like, not body-like, not part.
How do you know about this? These are models, right? You are talking about, you have created some kind of model by, some computer circuits where electrons apparently, that is also an abstraction and a model, right? And then some picture comes up that has already been clarified using some kind of programming that shows something, and therefore the mind is like this, or the reality is like this. It's all models, man. It's all abstractions. You can't take some abstraction based from these colors and sounds and tastes and say they are on the front end of these of these qualia, because they only arrived after you had the qualia. At the beginning of this, you had no idea what was before the qualia, because you needed to have the qualia before you had any abstractions. So qualia always comes before abstractions. So you can't put abstractions at the front end of your qualia. It's dysfunctional. It doesn't work. No matter how many abstractions you can come up with, it doesn't matter. Because what you're starting with are the qualia.
Particle-like. And this view has been actually mainstream amongst people who understand physics since the 1940s. And quantum field theory is the most successful theory in the history of science. So can we hitch a ride on this perspective, on this field-like understanding of nature, as opposed to the particle, atom-like understanding of nature, in order to...
So now he's taking that physics or quantum mechanic metaphor or model or abstraction, whatever term you want to use, and then saying, I guess I can say that everything beyond my experiences are like that. That's the problem, because he wouldn't have that abstraction if he didn't have any qualia. If he didn't have any qualia, my contention would be he wouldn't have any abstractions. He wouldn't have any concepts either, or anything else, right? That would be anything, right? It's because there are these qualia that all these other things follow, like cognitions and, abstractions and models and ideas and geometry and mathematics and science and whatever, emotions, feelings, desires, and so on. If there weren't these colors and sounds and taste and so on, none of that would be there. This means that you cannot take that which follows from qualia to explain what is on the other side of that qualia. It's simply dysfunctional, and I'm not buying it, right? You can't say anything basically other than, okay, when I reach the qualia, I can't go any deeper than that, right? you can't go in any direct fashion deeper than that, because that's the first thing you have. If you didn't have these qualia, you didn't have anything of any of the other kinds of things, right? I mentioned before. So you can't just put the horse behind the cart, so to say, right? Put the horse behind Descartes. It doesn't work. But you can sit there and juggle around your concepts all you like and create something that can't easily be refuted, because it's beyond experience. It's, as long as you jump into the cloud castles of abstractions, you can throw them around as you see fit. And that's what they always do. They always disconnect themselves from the qualia and go into abstractions and models and so on, and then throw them around and say, I guess they might be there out there before the qualia. Right? That's the trick. That's the sophistry. They're not even possibly aware that that's what they're doing, right? You have to stay on the back end, the back end of your qualia, right? You have your qualia, and you have what follows from the qualia, entails from the qualia, like cognitions and concepts and, abstractions and models and so on. But they are all on this side, so to say, of the qualia. You can't use them to say whatever you want about that which comes before the qualia, right? And moreover, even if you say there is a realm beyond the qualia, that must be different from the qualia. They can't be the thing, right? Because they're not the thing. They are the qualia. So they're different from the thing. But just because there is a different thing doesn't mean you're necessarily a dualist. You can just say there is possibly something. I'm going to treat my qualia as a representation of something before my qualia, but I can't get to it. So you're sort of dualist in a way. In that sense, I would say I am dualist in the sense that, yes, I agree that I would agree on the axiom that I'm treating my experiences as a representation of something outside. But that doesn't necessarily mean I can't get to, or I should get to, an explanation on what that is, because it doesn't matter. I can't get to it, as I say, right? And this being so hung up on explaining this outside, quote, realm, takes away the important focus is, what the hell do I do with my experiences, my concepts, and how do I understand them? Rather than, oh, there might be mind and ripples out there. Oh, yes. Right? Fuck off.
To make the best inferences we can about what nature is, as opposed to how it behaves. Is nature material? Is nature spiritual? Whatever that means. Is nature thought-like? Is nature idea-like? Let's begin.
Okay, so he has some, I don't know what he would call them, but he says here, he starts out with a question, right? And the headline that is a question, that also always a bad sign, right? Because it's a neglect of a necessity of making a statement rather than a question. Those who all make statements as questions, they are not interested in really answering the deeper thing, right? Deeper things. Or say that they can't answer them, but they will pretend that there's an answer by using a question, right? Okay, is physics about an external physical world with standalone non-mental existence? Isn't that presuppositional? Right? If you're starting out in your end of the world with the qualia, then why are you talking about physics and external? You're taking all sorts of shit for granted, right? Now I know this is sort of a presentation, it has to be short and all these things. Yeah. But why not just stay with the ground floor then, rather than trying to encompass everything in a 1 hour presentation then, if it takes 10 hours, right? Stay with that which you can explain sufficiently then. Okay, bullet 1. All we have, now that this we again, right? He's basically saying, I have this, therefore everybody else I consider like me, also have it, right? So he is sort of jumping, he's waiting just over, the problem of other minds, right? We have, right? Which is qualitative and mental. What does that mean? So what he calls perception is a quality, and it's mental. What does it mean that it's mental? What does he's just using a word, right? So it's perception, it's qualities, and it's mental. So is he basically using 3 words to describe the same thing? Or is he bringing in some new reduction base? He's trying to say it's made of qualities, and the qualities is made of mentals, right? And where does he get this? All we have is like it presupposes you might think there's more to it. Instead of saying what we have is, he's saying all we have. Too bad we don't have more than this. You might think we have more, but we don't. Too bad, right? Rather than saying this is what I have this, and I have this, and I have this. But he says all we have is. It's like he's trying to retract and say no, you that's too much. We only have this, right? Why is he saying only have this? What is he referring to implicitly in this kind of formulation? Okay, next one. There clearly is something beyond our individual minds out there. This is a fucking crazy statement, right? This is where my guards come up. There clearly is something beyond our individual minds, right? First of all, he says implicitly that there's something beyond his mind, and it's clearly there. How the hell is it fucking clearly? Yeah, he just said that all he has is perception and qualities, right? What is it about those qualities that makes him say there clearly is something beyond it? How does he get to do that, man? Just like that, as if it follows as an inference, as a logical leap of some kind, right? And he also says there's clearly something beyond our individual minds. So not only does he claim there's something beyond his mind, he can also say there are minds out there, and there's something beyond your mind also, right? So he's sort of lumping everything into these kind of statements. Let's say everything is just, hey, there it is, man, right? So it doesn't really matter what follows after this. He says, but physics describes merely our apprehension of it, our internal cognitive representation of whatever is out there. It doesn't really matter what you call the representation. You call it physics, you call it this, you call it that. When we're talking, if we can talk about an elephant or a tomato, as I've referenced before, then it's sufficient, because that's what we're going for, right? We're not going for boson particles when we're going down at the grocery store, are we, right? Do I check whether or not there is enough bosons or whatever in my car? No. I want to check if there's gasoline in my car, or they can ignite it, and so on, right? Yes, you could say that, yeah, but we need to do some fundamental stuff before we get there. Okay, but why are you then only doing fundamental stuff and never getting there into reality? Well, I will explain to you why. Because you have abstracted yourself from these qualia, right? You are moving around in your abstract cloud castles when you can bring in all sorts of ripples and mind and mental stuff and articles and science and peer-reviewed shit there and the other, right? It has been disconnected from your everyday reality. Therefore, you can't get back to it. So you have to stay there in your metaphysical cloud castle. You will never come back to reality and help me understand how I approach that tomato.
That journey of changing our perspective and trying to give a fair hearing to another way of regarding the world, we have to start by understanding that physics may not necessarily be about a non-mental material world out there. What physics actually studies is what we will see next. Even if what we will see next is the output of an instrument, a click from a...
What we will see next? Can you tell me whether or not I will see an elephant next? Can physics do that? Can it tell me whether or not I will see an elephant? That sounds very loose, right? Okay, I guess, science tries to predict that if this is the case, and that is the case, and, describing this scenario with these objects and these temperatures and so on, right? This is going to be the case in X amount of time, right? Okay, but that's not what I will see next. That's how things will behave and then be placed at that point in time in the future, predicted, right? I would have to be there. I would have to be there in order to experience it, right? I would still have to be there to observe my prediction.
Photo detector. Even then, the predictions of physical theory are about what we will see next. And that's the understanding that physicists like Marcus Miller from the Austrian Academy of Sciences are trying to get across. All we have is perception. We infer that there is a world isomorphic to perception, a world that has the same contours, forms, and shapes of perception, beyond perception itself, but we are cooped up in our own minds. All we have is perception, and perception is mental. That said, of course, there is a world out there that is not part of our own minds, and that's the reason why, if you were sitting next to me, you would describe my study in a way consistent with my own description of it.
How the hell do you know that? How the hell do you know that? Is it knowledge? It's just, of course, this would be the case. No, it doesn't follow, right? And just because I would describe it in a certain way that would align with your, if I'm saying there's an elephant there, and you say, yes, there's an elephant, it might be completely different qualia that I have that made me arrive at elephant. And you have vastly different qualia that also arrive at elephant. We could agree upon the concepts, but we can never agree upon the qualia, can we? Because you can never check whether or not I have the same qualia as you have. So if qualia is all we have, perception, which I suppose is the same as qualia, you're calling the qualitative, then we have to compare the qualitative to be in agreement, right? You're not talking about concepts or cognition anywhere here, as far as I can see, right? So what would I describe as if I say I experience yellow, you might experience something completely different with which you have been accustomed to call yellow, right? Just because we're using the same terms for whatever we experience doesn't mean that we are experiencing the same thing. This is an old thing. This goes way back, man, right? Oh, we are talking to the little people. We just have to convince them that we are superior and we have, we have 5 PhDs and have written 16 books about whatever, right? We are masters. I'm banner boy for the revolution, the idealist revolution. You better, align yourself with my,
habit, a common world, but that world is not necessarily physical, because physicality refers to the contents of perception, to the shapes and forms and dynamics of what we see on the screen of perception, even if what we see is the output of instrumentation, like telescopes and microscopes and oscilloscopes and what you have. The idea that the world out there is non-mental, it's clearly beyond our personal minds. So let's acknowledge that. The world out there is not in my mind alone, obviously. But it may still be mental and not in my mind. in the same sense that the thoughts of another person are mental, but they are not in your mind. You cannot change the thoughts of another person simply by exercising your will or by imagining that they are different. They are autonomous and objective from your perspective, but they are still mental. The thoughts of another person are mental. So the idea is, could there...
What do you mean? You don't have access? You don't even know if they're there. So now you're taking something for granted that you have to argue somehow. And if you're not even saying I have access to it. You're not saying it's an axiom. You're just pretending as if, of course, you have that insight. You don't, man. You can't just say, yeah, there's a mind over there. I can't experience it. It's beyond my perception, right? But I have decided there is a mind, so I guess there is a mind then, right? Holy shit, this is a lousy philosophy, right? It's so stupid, this, man, right?
There be a world? Could the world that is clearly out there also be mental, although not in our own minds, just like the thoughts of another person are mental and are not in your mind? We have to start from the world we see. And we
okay, so now we're going to we're not seeing the world as it is. Okay, no, fine. So then shut the fuck up about that world that you can have access to, right? It's like he's making some kind of backdoor leap where he says, okay, no, I can't see it directly. I only have my airplane dashboard. Okay, and the airplane dashboard is not the world out there, right? Let's pretend we've never seen that out there, which is the case with our metaphysics, right? But then he says, okay, but I can make an abstraction I call mind. Sort of grabbed out of my ass, right? Just because somebody used the term in the past doesn't mean it's sort of all of a sudden validated just because some time has gone by, or an idea of time has gone by, right? So I'm pulling a term out of my ass called mind and saying everything is made of this, and therefore that which is beyond my mind is also made of this. See, you see this? All of a sudden, no, I can't go there, no, because I only have perception. Oh, by the way, I came up with mind, and I say everything is made of mind. Hee. Solved. Everything is solved now. Everything is mind.
Have to ask ourselves, suppose you're in an airplane and you look through the window and you see a storm outside and a vast sky with lightning and the sun setting and whatnot. Is the world that is truly out there?
That is truly out there. But how do you get to that world out there? You're just taking for granted now that it's there. How do you get to the idea that there is a world out there, right? You have to explain yourself how you get there. You can't just decide it. Yeah, you have to say that you're deciding it. You are alluding to it being some kind of deduction, some kind of inference, or some kind of logic, something like that, right? As if it follows from the colors and the sounds that there must be something out there. You have to explain this leap. You can't just say it's out there, right? That's not good enough. You have to explain what is it about the colors, the sounds, the tastes, the smells, and so on that makes you say, of course there is an out there. What is it? Explain yourself, right? And I have made that question in the comments here. I'm not sure that Bernardo Kastrup would read that and never mind, but there's a lot of people who have attempted to answer my question. If I could get to the... I don't know why I can't get to the comments. I need to plug in my power cord here. Hang on. Let me see if I can get to the comment section. Some reason it won't give me the comment section here. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, you see it. I wrote this, and referring to me in 638. There is clear quote at minute 638. Bernardo Kastrup said, "There is clearly something beyond our individual minds," and I say, "Is not philosophical argument." And there is no our individual, there is my individual, and for that matter, that may be all there is, because it is all I have access to. Create the first bullet point above, which is all we have is perception. How he can jump from perception only to, clearly there's something beyond my perception, just like that, without strict philosophic argumentation, is a sign that he's a lousy, unrigid philosopher, in my opinion. And then there's now 27 answers, including some of my own. And I just have to check how I have 4 minutes or so. And I go into a long discussion about this, and I ask for an answer to how do you get to make this leap, and all the people answering just say, well, I made the leap. But you can't just do that. You have to explain what it is about that perception that makes you make the leap, right? And then they say, no, but then I reframe the question. No, I don't need the reframing of the question. Just answer the question. And if you can't answer the question, say so. Just be honest, man. Don't pretend that you are doing this kind of inference logic, right? Pretending that you are being some kind of, I can derive whatever I want from my experiences. Yeah, man, yeah. Because I have perception, therefore I can conjure up X and put whatever you want into X, right? Doesn't work, right? And you can go and check out my comments here and, see the whole list of that. A lot of discussion there. Otherwise, I hope this is enlightening to you, and I'm really hung up on this problem of, as I said in a recent podcast, that if there's a problem with somebody's philosophy, or there's something you keep coming back to, saying that's something I have a sense there's something I can't point out what it is, but there's something that rubs me the wrong way. Right? There's something somewhere, it seems, that doesn't work. It's probably very foundational, very likely foundational, and that's why you keep coming back to it, right? So I think I found a huge problem here. I don't even think it. I'm quite confident this is the problem in his philosophy. And I suppose this is a general problem in all philosophy. At the beginning, they take these unfounded leaps into whatever they want to be the case, right? Confirmation bias, and they're connecting the dots the way they want. They have the mantras, they have their agendas, and this is where it goes, because that's where they need it to go. So they just jump into it and pretend that it's okay, right? At least he says perception is the ground floor. I would like to stay with that. Let's deal with the qualia and see what happens with those, right? Because it might be the qualia that is that ground floor that we can all tap into directly without help from anybody else in order to explain it, right? If I experience red, I experience red. No matter if it's a different qualia, we can still agree upon it being red. We call it red at least, right? Now, if we could agree at least, right? We might not have the same qualia, but let's say that we are talking about an elephant, right? No matter what qualia we use to get to the elephant, we can agree upon elephant, and that was what I was going for, right? We can agree upon elephant. Because either I'm experiencing elephant or I'm not experiencing elephant, right? There's not sort of, I think elephant, but I'm not sure elephant. No. Either it might be that, okay, you're looking in the horizon, is that an elephant? It looks like an elephant. Well, you can say that intellectually you might be sort of concerned whether or not it actually is an elephant, but you needed to cognize elephant in order to talk to yourself about whether or not it's actually an elephant. You wouldn't say, is that an elephant, if you didn't have the cognition of elephant already, right? So either you're cognizing elephant or you're not cognizing elephant. And if you're cognizing elephant, you could make the proposition that's an elephant. And the other one, you could be concerned that they have the same kind of cognition, right? You could potentially agree upon that. But that would be your decision of what to agree upon, right? You can't tell other people what they should do, right? You can't inflict your philosophy on other people. State what you are going to do, right? I will be concerned that if you are doing a philosophy where you are telling other people what to do, rather than telling what you are going to do. Then you're trying to manipulate, you're not trying to do philosophy. Have a good day. See you in the next one.